we're looking for that. Like you said, we're looking for a problem that we can help solve. Yeah, I may design clothes and stuff, right? Backpacks and shoes and bags and, logos and whatever, right? But I mean, I design restaurants and salons and spaces, right? I don't know if there's a huge difference in discipline in that sense. There's a problem, you need a solution. Apply all your tools, in your design, in your acumen, in all of your accumulated experience, and throw it at a problem and see if you can solve it. I don't know if I can solve it, but I will try, and I will think outside the box critically to figure out a way to do it. And I think that's fun,
Right. Hey, welcome back to Hawaii Real, everybody. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button below. And today I have with me a special guest from Fitted Hawaii, Keola Rapozo. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on such short notice, man. And so you're the co-founder of Fitted, and you guys are specialized in those hats. Special hats that we see around and going for like a couple $100 on eBay and stuff like that.
Yeah, thankfully.
It's like super impressive that you guys were able to do that, And they're not Beanie Babies. Like that's the fabulous thing. It's like they actually have a purpose. They're a hat and you can wear it. They have character. Beanie Baby, it's a kid's toy. You guys don't sell Beanie Babies, do you?
We do not.
No. No. All right, so we were talking about you guys started in 2004, started the store in about 2005. How did you get involved in creating like a hat business and a clothing business?
I would say as far as Fitted goes, my partner, Renee Matheson, he's a pro skater, and in the 90s, he was very, very popular, traveled the world, and he did tours, multiple tours, Japan, Europe, through the Americas. And I think he was on a outer island, and I think he broke his ankle really bad. He had a high ankle sprain. And he was just starting to rethink what the next chapter was going to be for him. We were friends, we had mutual friends, and we started hanging out. And I was always into fashion and design. So we would talk all the time. And I remember this one conversation we had on my friend's balcony on Nahua, where he asked me, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to fashion school." He's like, "Why, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to own my own brand." He said, "Oh, that's cool. Like what?" And he was expecting me to say like surf or skate and I was like, "Oh, I have a women's clothing line." And he was like, "Whoa, that's cool." If you know how, I grew up in Kahalu, where a lot of my friends are very alpha male, and I remember feeling a bit weird telling people, "Oh, I design women's clothes."
Bro, what you gonna do that for?
Exactly. Yeah. And with him, he was like, "That's tight." I haven't heard anybody really aspire to be a designer.
It's definitely unique. Yeah.
Right. It's just, oh, I'm going to make t-shirts and we're going to sell t-shirts. And I wasn't really that. I figured everybody can make a t-shirt, right? The quickest way to become an owner of a brand is to make a graphic, a logo, and put it on a t-shirt, which is great. And, it's very effective if you have good ideology and good design skills. But for me, I wanted to learn how to produce a garment. I wanted to learn how all the steps it takes to develop a brand. Not a brand in that brand sense. I wanted to create garments, and I wanted to create like a craft. So we were friends, and eventually he was on a trip to New York, and he was flying back and called me as soon as he landed. He said, "Bro, I got this crazy idea. Where are you?" He was at like 10 at night, that New York flight lands. And I was filling in an art show for a friend who couldn't make it. He's from LA. And he basically sent a bunch of stuff, t-shirts, and I took his t-shirts and I made garments out of it. I cut and sewed and draped and pinned and did all of these, things, and we represented it in this art show. I was like, oh, I'm here. Come by. He's like, okay, shoot. He was like, hey, meet me outside. I was like, come inside. He's like, no, but I got this idea.
Sounds suspicious, huh?
Right, exactly. So I walk outside. I'm like, what's up? He's like, let's go take a walk. And we're at Ward Center at the time. I'm at our buddy's store called Information. By the way, shout out to them because they let me put my sewing machine and my dress form and all of my tools upstairs in the attic, and they gave me a little space so I could make and create garments. So he tells me, hey, you and I are gonna do a hat store. And I was like, we're gonna do a hat store. I was like, wait, what do you mean? He's like, I just got this idea. There's no boutique hat stores. We're gonna get the New Era account. We're gonna create our own. We're gonna create our own hats. We're gonna be 100% designed by us, and we're gonna do something that nobody's doing. And at the time, this was 2013, December 2013, and 2003, December 2003. And in 2002, I had lost my mom. The year prior to that, he had lost his mom. So it's weird. We have these conversations about how we're on the same cycle. Mm-hmm. Like, his mom passes away. A year later, my mom passes away. He gets married, has a daughter. I get married. I have a daughter. He has another daughter. I have another daughter.
Your lives are intertwined.
It's like this weird thing. But so at the time, I lost my mom. I just broken up with my girlfriend at the time. I moved out of the apartment. I was living out of my car. But I had all my things in my car and sleeping on my sister's couch. I basically called her one night and I'm like, hey, can I sleep on your couch? She's like, of course. Packed up all my stuff. And I was like, it was a pretty rough time for me. But I had got offered a job at my friend's clothing company in California. And it was a menswear brand. I think I was just fresh out of college, out of design school. And I was interning at Tory Richard. I worked at a gas station in Kaneohe for 11 years, by the way. And and then I was valeting. So I had 3 jobs and I was still going to school. But I was rock bottom. I was like, man, what am I going to do? Right. Like, I loved what I was doing at Tory Richard. I felt like I was moving towards my career. I had a 401k. I had, I was getting paid salary. I was like, man, is this it? I'm on my way. But I was miserable. I was living on my sister's couch. I had my clothes in brown and black heavy duty bags. And, I was like, maybe I should move to LA and just try and try and see if I can, matriculate through, the design world, get real experience and create value and etc. But then Renee had asked, he had asked me,
let's make hats.
He's like, let's make hats. And I was like,
now, did he see that from New York? Was there like boutique store hats in New York that he saw that got this idea from?
I think at the time, what was really happening and bubbling was sneaker stores were sort of really like the coolest thing out, right? Mm-hmm. Is these really tier 0 boutiques where Nike would you would have these stores like Kicks was a tier 0, Huff in San Francisco was a tier 0, Undefeated was a tier 0 in LA. There was a handful of places that could sell these really exclusive Nike product. Mm-hmm. I think that kind of sparked the idea, and but nobody was doing headwear. And him and we would go to like every lids we could to find, a MLB hat, a fitted at the time. And we just shared in similarities. We love this place. And we wanted to tell stories of this place. I didn't know what it was like to grow up in New York or LA. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't tell the story of that. Right, of an urban street sort of scenario, but I can tell a story of a kid growing up in the country and how I was influenced by music, influenced by design, influenced by architecture and furniture. All of these things are sort of esoteric in a sense to someone like me growing up from where I come from, but I love that sort of contrast, right? That juxtaposing these very contemporary ideas along with like being Kanaka, and what does that look like? What does it look like to design from a very Kanaka mindset, but present it in this interesting street culture, right? This sort of fast paced, quick strike, low number, scarcity. The professionals call it scarcity model. At the time, it was just like we couldn't afford to fail in terms of our buys. So we were designing our own product, and if we were overbuying a design that failed, that sucked, then for us it would probably ruin us, right?
So did the scarcity model like push you guys to purchase low amounts of product or design product, and that way made the scarcity because you didn't want to fail and buy like 500 hats, so you only bought like 20 hats?
Yeah, so I would say the scarcity model didn't have a definition when we started.
Yeah.
It was pretty much when we opened in a traditional model. Traditional calendar would go 4 seasons, 3 deliveries each season, and then they would have some overlap of 1 week or 2 week within that season, and then you would sort of build out your scale per SKU within that structure. So we tried that, right? We had, I think, 6 t-shirts, 4 designs, and we did a bunch of custom MLB hats because at the time there wasn't the capability of designing our own. We call them tapes now, embroidery tapes, but then we didn't have the capability of it. We could only design colorways in San Diego Padres or New York Yankees, which was at the time it was very it was very exciting because I think Spike Lee was the first to ask New Era if he can have a different color in a New York Yankees hat. And it sort of started this trend of flipping colors. That was very exciting at the time, right? Because we were buying black on black hats from Lids.
Yeah, I think I saw that like back in 2002, 2001-ish,
Yep.
where like the New York Yankees came out with a black hat with a black logo. You couldn't really see the logo, but it was popped out.
Yep.
You could see it reflect in the light kind of thing. People went bonkers over that.
Right. Just that subtle nuance of, oh, it's not a navy and white Yankees hat. Whoa, So we expanded on that capability, and that's what we opened with. I think we had 40 different designs. And mind you, getting a New Era account was not easy. I mean, it was every day calling, every day asking for filling out multiple applications. Here's this hat store. Here's these 2 kids from the middle of the ocean in the Pacific asking the biggest headwear manufacturer to give us a chance, right? They're like, it's going to cost you this much just to get in. You know what I mean? And it was a big number for us. And we're like, just to apply? Yeah. And you're going to be like, they assigned us a rep from a region that had knew nothing about Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So like we were they were trying to push us to buy inline product. And we were like, we don't want inline product. We want to create our own product. But we almost had to buy inline to sort of get them to budge.
So what is that when you mean buy inline?
Basically, they have their design team in-house, and they would put out line sheets, and basically the traditional model.
So you're just buying templated kind of hats?
Every year they have their own traditional, seasons with colors and themes, and then they put it out to their accounts, and then their accounts buy. The structure makes sense if you're a big brand and you're trying to organize. For us, we were 2 guys. We were working the shop. We were splitting the hours. I mean, we just needed product that was different. So having that those colorway flips was very important for us.
Very cool.
Interesting. Yeah. This is early on though, because it got way thick. Like the ideas got much more robust. The execution, the fabrics, everything got more as their capabilities grew, and they created an entire division dedicated to brands like us, but it didn't exist before that.
So before that, they didn't have that. They were going for the mass production kind of things. And then when you guys started being successful and other shops like yours started being successful around the country, they started tailoring more to your type of shop?
Yeah. I think they noticed that there was a value in low quantity, high concept product. And they started to allow, they call them tastemakers. It's called their tastemaker account. And there's only a handful still to this day. I think they even have less today than they did when at the peak there was a ton of people. You know, brands could apply, and if they approve them, they will do collaborations with them. But now there's only a handful of, especially with COVID, they cut a lot of the accounts. So we're very fortunate that we're considered a brand partner. I mean, like I said, we're just two kids from the middle of the ocean, and we created enough value for them that they would invest back in us and give us the highest tier of account, which is awesome. We didn't think that it would become that when we started, but we certainly hoped that we could figure it out.
Is it beyond your expectations of what you planned when you first started from where you are now?
I would say I didn't know how it looked, how we would get there, but I knew the feeling of success would be realized at some level.
Okay, so you were telling me before we even started recording that you got your start as a miniature entrepreneur when you were like 8 years old, and your mom was making these little trinkets and stuff like that, and one of the big ones was the koa helmets with the feathers and everything that people had hanging on their rearview mirrors and stuff. I know I had one in college.
Yeah. My mom and my stepdad was a cabinet maker, so he was a craftsman. He was also the groundskeeper at Wahole Elementary. So he would cut the grass and stuff while I was in class. But anyways, my parents, they were, how we survived in the 80s, were they, along with our free labor, my sister and I, we created namea, or like things. And it was like we did miniature pu'ili'ilis, ipus, ipuhekes, makinis, which is the helmets, lomi sticks, hair picks. We did all these little things, and we would take it to the Handcrafters Guild, or we were part of the Handcrafters Guild, and we would make the circuits. Back then, there's no internet, so really we would have to make our things, set up our tent. We had this little rolling hanger, and there were these, really miniature items of these. They're like scaled items, and that we'd hang them on what we call Christmas trees, which is pine trees back then, because at the time we couldn't really afford Douglas firs or whatever it's called. So we would make these ornaments during the peak season of October, November, and December.
I was a little kid. What was your role in all that?
Cleaning kamani nuts, picking kamani nuts, drilling in these kamani nuts, picking out all the nut inside, so we could use that nut for the eyes of the makini. Ipuhekes, so we'd glue them together. We would have uki grass or raffia. Sanding koa for the hair picks. Guava, cutting guava sticks for lomi sticks. I mean, whatever it is my parents needed us to do. I think every day after school we had to clean like 30 or 40 kamani nuts on a belt sander.
Oh.
That was like, and then we would sit there and go zzz, and the thing would fly, bang bang bang. And I remember after the season was done, we had to clean the garage, and there would just be hundreds of kamani nuts everywhere that we would lose, But we had this drawer that my dad would just keep filling up. Okay, you got to clean, every day we had to clean kamani nuts. So yeah, we were free labor. But then we'd also have to set up the booth. Like I remember we had a system, right? We had our rolling cart that he built that had 4 doors, and each door consisted of hooks with paper clips, and that's how we organize all of the ornaments. And then we'd have, back then was old school, tents. We never had pop-ups back then. So we had our tent with all of the couplings and those things, and we had our tarp. So everything was like a system, and we packed it up in our VW van, our teal. If anybody knows me from the 80s and my mom, we had a teal VW bus. I think it was a 72 or 71 bus.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
It's a collector's item now, right?
And the seat wasn't bolted in, and the seat would move every time we drive over to Like, and it was good times. But that's where I learned. I think that's where I got the spirit from, knowing that, hey, bro, we can live and we can be okay. I mean, I remember after having a good day at the craft fair, we'd go kimchi one. Kimchi one was like, we had a good day, you know.
And you guys like spending the cash that you just made?
Yeah, I mean, my stepdad would earmark, like, if we have a good day today, we get to eat out. If not, we got to go home and eat, stuff like that.
Because that really instills like the spirit of entrepreneurship. It's like, hey, I made this product over the past few weeks or months or whatever, and then now I'm selling it. Yep. And with that money, I'm going to go eat. Yeah,
I think just the realization and the value of creating something out of things, right? Just like going to the park with Swansea. Swansea's had the best kamani nut tree, and we would pick kamani nuts, and then we'd take the kamani nuts home and we'd make stuff from it and we'd sell it. Like my mom would make, my sister and I actually make the sales too. And I think it was then that the leap wasn't as harsh. Like I didn't think it was a big deal. Like, oh yeah, I'll just make something, you know what I mean, and sell it. Like it wasn't like this barrier for me.
But you grew up doing it. Yeah.
It's like whatever, yeah. I'll sell whatever I have.
Yeah,
I'll just make it and sell it. It's all good. There was no barrier there.
I think that's like a huge problem with these days with like Native Hawaiians and locals in general. Is like they don't have that entrepreneurial spirit as they're growing up from childhood. So it really is a big jump,
Yeah, I would say that we growing up in a Native Hawaiian community, and that there's a lot of love and support, but then there's also a lot of we hear it a lot, crabs in a bucket, right? It's like, we support you building and growing until you're doing better than me, right? Like I support you doing something, just not doing better than me. And I always felt weird about that because I knew what it was like to mom sending me into Times at Temple Valley with $10 food stamps to go buy something for her. We lived O'Connor Road, so we'd walk over the mountain and we'd go to Times, grab it, and walk back over the mountain. I mean, that was normal, So I kind of I didn't understand. I never thought we were poor, Like my sister and I talk about it all the time. Like we never felt that we were struggling. It was just what it was. It was very joyful. We had a great upbringing, My dad was a cabinet maker. We had no cabinets. We had no cabinet doors. Cabinets were open faced. And I was like, Dad, why don't you just make He's like, I'm busy making cabinets all day at work. I don't want to make cabinets at home.
Oh my God, yeah.
So it's interesting to, to see that side too.
That's super interesting. A cabinet maker doesn't have cabinets at home because he's just
too tired, too just over it, too much things to do. I mean, we also had that business, right? We had to make stuff to take to the craft fair. So yeah, I think at early age, I understood that you needed to hustle, right? Like it wasn't like I knew that our life, like we had fun. I love how I was raised, and I never knew it was struggling. I never knew it was that other people. I tell you a story. So I grew up O'Connor Road, and I had a friend that lived down the street, Chad Tom. How's it? If you're listening, Chad, how's it? His dad owned a construction company, so he was a general contractor. So they had a big house, nice, everything. But I remember after playing, the mom made us SpaghettiOs. And I ate SpaghettiOs, and I went home. I was like, Mom, what? Bro, he just threw this thing in the microwave. She's like, yeah, well, we're not buying that. And I was like, well, oh, we can't afford that. I get it, At that time, it hit me. I mean, I grew up with HCAP. I don't know if HCAP, if anybody knows HCAP. So basically, I think it was Tuesdays, You could come in a brown bag, and you start at one side of the table, and would be bread, government cheese. I'd say government? It's block cheese, right? What else did they have? Canned foods. And then you would start at one end and you come out the other end, and it was $5. And that was like normal, right? Like I never thought any of that stuff was like weird, until I got older and I see my friends got all these like microwavable, you know what I mean? SpaghettiOs. I didn't even taste SpaghettiOs before, So, yeah, growing up was normal, I think, in my mind. But it created value for me because as I got older, I understood, oh man, my parents were struggling, like they struggled to make it happen. And I appreciate that. And I think it laid the groundwork for, where I'm at now.
So you have children, right?
I do.
So like your parents, obviously they tried to do as much as they could to make your and your sister's life better than theirs. Are you trying to do the same with your children? Are you bringing in the entrepreneurial spirit with your children? Maybe not in the same fashion, sanding the nuts and everything, but are they getting involved with your business?
Yeah, right now they. So my daughter's 3. Okay. My youngest is 3. My older daughter's 8. Then I also have a stepson that I had from a previous relationship. He's 22 now. He spent a lot of time with me building fitted, sweeping and mopping and folding T-shirts. And as he graduated from high school, I would have him packing boxes and stuff like that. And then my 8-year-old, she's in my office 3 times a week, distance learning. So she's very integrated into my business but I don't particularly want them to. It's funny because my wife also has a business and she comes from an entrepreneurial family, and she just felt like, I think it's instilled in us as we're young to be like, oh, it's okay. Like I was talking about barriers, right? There's no barriers to it. So it just becomes natural to take that step. People say, oh, you gotta have balls to do stuff like that. It's like, it's whatever it is, right? It's no big deal, right? Like if I fail, how bad can it be? Right? I mean, I already know what it's like to be on government, assistance. I grew up that way. My mom, after they got divorced, she was a single mother. My sister and I both went to college, both graduated, both have careers. So she did something right, So I think it's less about that, and it's about the values that we instill in our children. And I think by us, for me personally, seeing my mom struggle as she got older really motivated me. I mean, like really motivated me. I did not want to feel that ever, My mom struggled to buy a house, and she never realized that after she got a divorce with my stepdad. And I was like, I'm going to buy a house. You know what I mean? Like whatever I got to do, I'm going to buy a house. So I've been laser focused on that for the past 20 years, So finally, my wife and I bought a house, and man, it was the most gratifying. My sister's on her 3rd. I'm like, jeez. So, yeah, I think it's just a value and that if it's around you and it becomes normal, it's a part of our honor. It becomes part of our characteristic trait to achieve, to be focused on achieving. I'm never satisfied, like I'm still struggling till today. I'm still focused on the next goal and the next idea and the next execution and the next brief or study, right? Like these are like in my day, I'm doing 4 or 5 different briefs and studies and executions. I'm doing so many different stuff a day that I can't stop to be like, oh, I made it. Like, no way. I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah, I've had a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners on this show, and one of the main things they all have in common is that they're not satisfied, and there's always something next that they're striving for. They're never at the top. They've never completed their hike to the top of that mountain. Like they're still going.
I would never want to be number one. I constantly want to be looking up. I think that's important. It keeps that edge. Keeps it fresh. You know what I mean? So, yeah. It's interesting right now when we talk about that. all these businesses that have been closing, it's very, very dissatisfying to see the state of affairs for small businesses. I mean, I know how hard it is, and I know the struggle, and we have friends that had to close down their stores, restaurants that had to close, and I'm like, it's a very stressful time, and when we made the decision to pivot and move the way we moved, we were positioned very well for this, in the sense where our strategies of small quantity of product, high quantity of designs. So what I mean by that is quick strike. A lot of businesses can't pivot like that, and it's unfortunate that we're in this position. That some of the leadership that we have, I question some of the decisions that they're making. I mean, we're gutting the fabric of our community, of these islands, with these small businesses, these mom and pop shops, and this very integral a web that we've built. It took 50, 60 years to build. Some of these businesses have been around for 50 something years and they're closing. It's unnerving to see this, right? We should be focused on supporting these small businesses and getting them the support that they need, figuring out ways that we can stay open in this time. And I'm very frustrated about that. And I wish that there was more thought and care into that aspect, because when this is over and we look at the papa and it's desolate, I don't want to be the only one standing, or I don't, you know what I mean? I mean, I want to be standing because I have Kuleana, but I don't want to I don't want my friends to be there. Competition is good. Like I want to see people, survive this attrition, right? This mental attrition and the physical attrition that's happening. And it's a thing that I think about every day, we were positioned properly, I guess, for it. And I've been hustling during this pandemic, and we've been fortunate to pick up some design work and every month pivot this and that, and we've had huge issues with supply chain that we've had to navigate through, but fortunately, like I said, we've been able to survive this far. The longer this goes, the harder it gets, right? So we really need like some really solid ideas and execution from our leadership. Isolation is our best tool. I mean, even in this pandemic, right? Like if we would have used our best attribute, which is our isolation, we shut everything down when we knew that there was, early on, and just kept the economy going, a circular economy. We could have really pressure tested the idea of a circular economy here. I think that would have been important. I think that would have been an innovative idea, right? To keep every business open, let us fly inter-island, but nobody coming in. Zero, not mainland, not overseas, and see if we can be self-sustainable. I think that would have been a more fruitful, like we would have not had any issues with Matson, right? Matson has that big contract thing going on because they had to cut, right? Because there's not enough goods and stuff being shipped in between the islands. And I got friends who work on the docks and got laid off. And I mean, it's happening all over, but our attribute of isolation, we're the most isolated landmass in the entire world, not just, right? We're already winning, right? We already won against COVID if we got it early, right? If we would have made that decision early and been like, bruh, just shut it down, keep everything open. Everybody outside in cannot come in, but everybody inside, like we give everybody like, hey, you guys got 15 days to get home, wherever you're at. And then we're going to put you guys in quarantine, 2-week quarantine. That's better than the 7-month quarantine that we've been. Okay, we're going to do 2-week quarantine, and the thing turned into, 80 days. It's like, what are we doing? And we're going to constantly be chasing, right? I think design and execution through technology is very important for us to harvest, right now because we have the platform to do it, right? People can look from the outside and see, hey, the system works, or they're pressure testing this idea, where we talked a little bit about holograms in streets and stuff like that instead of having stop signs or, crosswalks, pedestrians getting banged. I mean, I feel like we have an opportunity to use critical thought and design brief to solve some issues that we have. But I don't know, for some reason, we're not really paying attention to the arts or the design community for solutions. We're not turning to them for solutions.
It's all like the old way, the old school way.
Yeah, especially here, right? It's like, doesn't make sense because we have the opportunity. We're very small, if we fail, it's easy for us to pivot, right? It's easy for us to right the ship again. And I could be just talking out of my ass, but I mean, being a designer, this is all I think about is how can we improve on the doorknob? How can we improve on, asphalt? How can we improve on construction techniques, right? How can we improve on, it's like prefab. Prefab is a response to the waste of time, labor, and management of building things, right? You just prefab it and then wheel it on site. You spend 2 weeks assembling it on site, but 3 months building it in a factory. It's controlled. It has, right? Those are all design techniques and it's to solve a problem. And we have a lot of problems that we could solve using design.
So it's super interesting. Like your main thing is being a designer, but you're also like a genuine problem solver. And you're looking for those problems to solve and those holes to fill.
Yeah, it's a problem I have. It's as designers.
I don't think that's a problem. That we need more human beings like that.
Amongst my peers, my design peers, it's always like, man, why do we try to solve every problem? We're looking for that. Like you said, we're looking for a problem that we can help solve. Yeah, I may design clothes and stuff, right? Like backpacks and shoes and bags and logos and whatever, right? But I mean, I design restaurants and salons and spaces, right? I don't know if there's a huge difference in discipline in that sense. There's a problem, you need a solution. Apply all your tools, in your design, in your acumen, in all of your accumulated experience, and throw it at a problem and see if you can solve it. I don't know if I can solve it, but I will try and I will think outside the box critically to figure out a way to do it. And I think that's fun,
It is fun. It's totally fun, especially when you do end up solving a problem.
Oh, it's super gratifying.
Yeah, it's so gratifying.
And it's funny because I remember before, I was thinking about this the other day, 20 years ago, I remember sitting down trying to figure out when I was in design school and I had to, submit whatever project. What am I going to call my label? And I was so generic back then. I called it Ola, right? Like it was my name, right? Life in Hawaiian. And I look back at it now. I remember I could not think critically and solve this brand issue. I was so like, I didn't have enough experience. I didn't create enough interference in my life to solve those problems exponentially. So now when I sit down with a brief, I have a process and like I pull out, I can read a paragraph, pull out some words, and then create a brand from just those words. And it's from a process that I've learned over time. It's very interesting because I was thinking about it the other day. Like, if somebody wanted to create a brand, I mean, it takes time, right? A brand takes time, and I'm not a problem solver. I can solve everybody's brand problem, but I can tell a story and I can figure out a way to help you tell your story visually. So that's the fun part. Yeah.
Yeah, because your hats always have not always, but they mostly have different logos and stuff like that.
Everything has a story.
Right.
Yeah. Every product we put out has a story. Has to. So like I talk about this, and you probably see interviews I've done in the past. I have like this design process that it's a 4-step process that step one is like, it has to be handsome, right? It has to have some sort of visual handsomeness to it. 2, there needs to be a reason why it's handsome, whether it be color or visually, oh, hey, that's cool material, or, etc. And then the third one has to have kauna. So everything has to support the prior step. So the kauna, oh, why does that fabric, does that fabric have a story? Well, yeah, it's multicam. It's grown. It's 100% American made product. The content is grown in America. The inks are made in America. It's woven in America. It's
so you go
sewn in Hawaii.
that deep. You go that deep into the logo, into the designs.
That's the third step. The fourth step is makavalu. So it has to have makavalu.
What is makavalu?
Makavalu is like a Hawaiian. It's a Hawaiian word, right? Maka is eyes, valu is 8. Evalu is 8. So it's to look at things with 8 eyes. It's also directional, a navigational directional, north, south, east, west, northwest, right? Any path in life. It's the way that our ancestors split the earth, right? You got Keola Poluhiva Kane, Keola Poluhiva Kanaloa, and then you got Keola Poluhiva Keola Kiku'uku, which is the equator. So they split so like everything has to have a story to it. And that fourth one, I don't know, if that logo is handsome and that color supports that logo, and then that logo is talking about Kamehameha, well, what's the makavalu? Well, the makavalu is that Kamehameha had this famous saying where he said, "The endless is the good I have left you." Right? I interpret that my way, where it's like endless is the good he's left us. Don't fuck it up. Sorry, I don't know if you got to bleep.
No, you're good, man.
Okay. So like now the kuleana is on me personally. Now I have to make sure that everything we put out lives up to that, right? Like I cannot screw it up for the next generation, right? On the timeline of Piko'i, Piko'o, Piko'a, which is our past, present, and our future, I have to make sure while I'm here in the present that I'm holding space, right? I'm taking into account the people who came before me, because I don't want to dissatisfy them. Right, I want to make sure that when I get there, I'm greeted with love and respect, right? Because I reverence them and I make sure that I'm connected to them that way while I'm here. And then my kids, my children, the next generation, that I'm leaving an example that they can outpace, that's standard. Dad did this, I got to do better than dad. So being responsible for my part of my timeline is also the same thing where I'm talking about. Kamehameha has this quote, the makavalu of this saying that he has, right? Of endless is the good I have left you. That part is very important to me. So I tell that story through every product.
And that also ties in the whole problem solving issue, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to solve the problems for the future generations to actually not have those same problems.
Well, it's heavy when you put it that way. I just design.
It's all linear, right? It's what you're doing.
I would like to think that some of the things that we do gives the next person confidence to go out there and sort out their own solutions or their own problems that they have to solve. Gives them the confidence, like we talked about barriers earlier. Gives them the confidence to not have to worry about the barriers. And I think that's one of the hardest things to overcome is the barrier you put for yourself, or others may put on you, and then it grows as as an inferior, complex or something. You build a complex from it. So, I'd like to think that, some of the things that, some of the ike that we share, it gives people confidence.
Okay, so beyond all of that you just talked about, do you have a separate philosophy on your life?
That's a thick one. Separate philosophy of my life. I have a lot of them. And it goes in sections. Like I've, with my children, how I raise my children, how I run my business. There's a philosophy, I guess you could call. It's more like a way that we treat people. And from a business standpoint, my partner and I, we've never, we always make sure that we pay people, and we've never fucked anybody over. That's kind of like standard. And that just means that I have to be accountable, not only to myself, but I have to be accountable to the people who are around me, because they also have to be accountable for the people that they're, responsible for. Accountability is probably, it's a broad term, but accountability has been the boundaries that keep me in my path. I think that's why I've never got into crime. I've never got like one of the things is never disappointing my mom because I've seen her struggles, and I've eliminated disappointment from the equation as much as possible. And I do that if you ask me about a philosophy. I never put myself in a situation where I have to make a bad decision. And I think that has like resonated throughout my upbringing. I could feel when something's not right. I just remove myself from the situation, you know? And I've too close to the flame. If I feel that I'm too close, I'm out. You know, I don't like to follow people. I want to make my own decisions on my own terms. So I feel like, I guess that would be one of my core philosophies is never putting myself in a position to make a bad decision.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great philosophy. And I know that a lot of people don't take that to heart when they're growing up. It's just,
it's too easy to.
It's very easy to put yourself in a bad situation where you're going to you have to make either a bad decision or a worse decision.
Yeah. And
sometimes it's hard to stay out of those. But.
There's another thing I think that we don't put too much weight on. And I think it goes back to the accountability, but it's also like getting intimate with yourself, right? Like knowing who you are. The quicker you find out who you are and you find out the triggers and how to suppress things and how to, the push and pull within yourself, the quicker you can build your confidence. So like what I mean by that is like knowing your personality traits. So like, okay, so back on track. Like I know that I forget a lot of things because there's a lot of stuff going on in my head. So I'll put fail safes, right? I'll put I put a fail safe to stop to remind myself of where things are. And I don't know, some people call it OCD, but like I'll put something back in the exact same place my entire life. So I'll never have to deal with that again. Because if not, I'll just go off the rails, right? Like, wow, where's my keys? Where's my wallet?
I do the same exact thing. My keys go one place, my wallet and my phone, they all go in a specific place, a place or specific places. So I know where to look.
Yeah. So something as nuanced or something as like arbitrary as that, I put a lot of focus on it. The quicker I learn my faults, the quicker I can solve them by adding a fail safe to it, if that makes sense. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, like if like I have friends who love to drink, or I have friends who love to like be around and be social. So if you know that you love drinking and you love being social, right now, COVID is probably the worst time for you to be, right? Like, because you're probably going to find yourself on a beach with 30, 40 other people, right? Drinking and forgetting that you're supposed to be social distancing. Like those kind of scenarios for me is non-existent because I know I can't be in this space, or I can't be because I know myself, right? So I would say understanding, getting intimate and learning your characteristic traits, or in Hawaiian we call them our ano, like learning what our ano is, we can better resolve some of these things for future use. And I think that technique for me, it worked, right? I've used it a lot.
Any final words for our listeners?
We're done already? Yeah. If I talk for like 2 hours. No, I mean, just thanks for taking the time to sit down, talk, invite me, talk story.
No, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, great. I've been told from a mentor of mine that being published is the greatest way that you can leave. We call them inomona, like leave things, leave stuff for people to reference. So I've made it a point the past five years or so to do more things like this, where being published or just my thoughts and ideas is more and more relevant. Especially as I get older. I want to be able to leave whatever it is that I do, if it's valuable to somebody.
You're sharing it to the world, and also you're putting it out there on platforms like YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio for your children to listen to when they're 30.
Yeah.
Hopefully YouTube is still around by then.
Maybe some other other versions of it.
Right, but they can look back and see who was Dad when he was younger.
Being published.
Yeah.
A lot of people write, and put out books, and I'm not a good writer, but so.
Keola, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Keola Rapozo.
Oh, yo.
Stay happy, Hawaii.